Welcome to REIN, the Real Estate Investor Growth Network with your hostess, Jen Josey. Join like-minded real estate investors and accelerate your business towards greatness. You will hear step-by-step strategies for success, interviews with real estate rock stars, and we will dig deep into past projects where we bear it all, including the good, the bad, and some just plain ugly. So get excited. Here's the bestower of Badassery herself, the real Jen Josey. Listener discretion is advised.
Hi, and welcome back. I'm Jen Josey, creator of REIN, the Real Estate Investor Growth Network. Whoop, whoop. On today's episode, we have a guest that will be sharing their badassery. But before we begin, here's today's Badassery Bestowment, my little badass gift to you. Today's topic is the importance of tracking your mileage. When you're starting out in real estate investing, every dollar counts. One of the simplest yet most overlooked ways is to maximize your tax deductions is tracking your mileage. Whether you're driving to look at properties, meeting with contractors, or heading to networking events, those miles add up and so do the savings. Here are 4 reasons why you should track your mileage. Number 1 and most obvious, tax deductions equals more money in your pocket. The IRS allows real estate investors to deduct mileage driven for business purposes. In 2025, the standard mileage deduction went up to 70 cents per mile, and that adds up fast. Number 2, audit-proof your business. If the IRS ever audits you, proper mileage log serves as proof of your business expenses. Using a mileage tracking app or a simple spreadsheet ensures you have solid records. Number 3, better business insights. I like this one. Tracking mileage helps you understand how much time and money you're spending on travel. If you're constantly driving to properties that don't fit your criteria, it might be time to adjust your investment strategy. Number 4, it's an easy habit to build. With apps like Mile IQ, Everlance, or QuickBooks Self-Employed, tracking mileage is automatic and effortless. No more forgetting or guessing, just set it and forget it. So, tracking your mileage is one of the easiest ways to keep more of your hard-earned cash and stay compliant with tax laws. Start today, and when tax season rolls around, you'll be glad you did. A true badass investor knows that small habits lead to big financial wins. Now, on to today's episode of the Real Estate Investor Growth Network podcast. Today, we have a special guest who doesn't just talk about international investing, he lives it. Ladislas Maurice, better known as the Wandering Investor, left behind the corporate boardrooms of Nestle Ghana, where he managed a $90 million business across West Africa, to chase his true passion, uncovering global investment, residency, and baking opportunities firsthand. From emerging markets to second passports, Ladislas travels the world sharing his insights through the Wandering Investor blog and across YouTube, Instagram, X, and Telegram. If you're looking for real, on-the-ground knowledge, not just slick marketing, then you're in for a treat. I'm happy to have him on the show, so welcome, Ladislas Maurice. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Yes. So let's start off. You had a very high-level corporate career managing a $90 million business. What made you leave that behind and to become a full-time investor?
Yeah, so good question. So I spent most of my 20s in Africa as an expat for Nestle, the big food company. I started off in Switzerland and then was expatriated to South Africa for 4 years and then Ghana for 3 years. And look, I mean, I was just looking at my bosses and my boss's bosses a few levels above, and it's just not the sort of life I wanted for myself. I wanted a bit more freedom. And quite frankly, I wasn't really enjoying working 70 hours a week. So I was like, cool, I did this for my 20s. I learned a lot. The money was great. Um, but now that I'm hitting 30, I want to try something else. So I didn't really have much of a plan. Initially, my idea was to go to Dubai, but essentially I left and I was like, before going to Dubai, let me just go on a road trip. So my parents were starting their retirement at the same time. So we decided to go on a trip together, which was really nice. So we
Nice.
drove the car from Oman in the Middle East near the UAE to Paris by car. So we drove through all of Iran, Armenia, Georgia, through
Oh my
Turkey,
goodness.
Greece, up to Ukraine, and then west to Paris. So that was a fascinating trip, and it was the first time that I had two things going at the same time. One being having money, right? Because I had worked, earned good money as an expat, etc. I had a fair amount of savings. And two, time. Like generally in life, one either has money or time, but rarely does
Right.
one have both. So I was able just going through these countries to take my time. I'd arrive in a city and I'd go look at the real estate agencies. I'd talk to other expats and go talk to some lawyers. And along the way, I just saw some really interesting value. So I started doing some flips in some of these countries. And I just never got to moving to Dubai. And then it's been 8 years now, and I travel around the world full time, managing my own portfolio. And so I do a lot of real estate, but stocks as well, but mostly real estate um, in emerging markets and sometimes in frontier markets as well.
And what a blessing to take that trip with your parents, too. I think that is great as adults to be able to travel with them. That is lovely. So many of my listeners are still stuck in the 9 to 5 grind and or working 70, 80 hours a week for corporate America. Can you share what were some of the challenges you faced when transitioning from Nestle to full-time investing?
So personally, it was not a challenge for me, but I'll tell you the challenge that people typically face.
Okay.
Because I come from a background of working in emerging markets and stuff. So I'm used to uncertainty. I embrace uncertainty. I thrive on uncertainty.
It
Most
makes
people
me
do not.
sweat.
Yeah, exactly. Most people do not. So that's the first thing, uncertainty. And two, for some people, loss of status is a big one.
Ooh.
It's hard to admit. Most people will not admit to it. But going from saying, I work for Google, I work for Nestle, I work for Uber, and having everyone around being like, oh, wow, blah, blah, to what do you do? Like trying to flip a house, not being too clear and trying to figure things out and having a startup. It's tough initially. So I'd say loss of status is a big one for a lot of people. So uncertainty and loss of status.
And and I never even thought of it that way because for me, I couldn't wait to get out of corporate America, but I did take my time. I tried to get some because the uncertainty was painful for me. A bead of sweat as soon as you said that. I was like, because I remember that feeling but just to take that leap. But it's also the naysayers around you who are like, you're leaving a perfectly good job to flip houses. What in the world? So, yes, both points very well said. So, I want to jump in here because you've explored real estate opportunities in multiple countries. And what are the biggest pros and cons of investing in international real estate?
Cool. So I think that for your American audience, it's really important to understand that investing in international real estate is not easy money. That's the first thing. It's not, I'm not here saying, oh, if you want easy money, invest outside of the US. That's not the case. One, there's a lot less liquidity in most markets. So in the US, typically in most big markets, you can sell a condo, a house within a few weeks pretty easily. In a lot of countries, normal liquidity is at least a few months,
Wow.
sometimes a few years. which is not very conducive to flipping. The other one is access to financing. As soon as you venture outside of your home country, and that's valid for everyone in the world, getting local financing is extremely complicated or a lot more expensive compared to locals, which makes you less competitive. So you can sometimes get financing back home in the US to invest overseas, but not always. But locally, generally, they're very limited solutions. So those are the cons. If you want to make easy money, fast money, seriously, just stick to the US. That's where most of the opportunities are.
Okay.
Even when there's a bear market in the US, there's always a town somewhere that's booming because there's a new factory or a new mine or whatever, some like oil thing going on. So there are always opportunities in the US if you want faster, quicker money in an environment that you understand. Now, why would you venture overseas? A few reasons. The first one is diversification. I mean, we've seen how crazy politics can be, right? Veering from far one side to far the other side with
Yep.
all the changes and the emotions that go along with it. So, not being 100% allocated to the US is reasonable once you start to hit a certain net worth, right? So I wouldn't say you need to diversify immediately with your first 100K or 500K. That's not the point. The point is once you reach a certain level and you're comfortable, that's when you start to have to diversify to essentially protect yourself. That's one. Two, obviously, lifestyle benefits. I mean, you can go to Italy, buy in Sicily. I was there recently. It's incredible. You can buy beautiful homes for ten, $20,000. Then you get them renovated. You're looking at renovation costs of for good quality renovation about 100 per square foot.
Okay.
And then you end up with like a beautiful old stone apartment in a beautiful Sicilian town, and you're just like very comfortable, very nice. And there are direct flights to New York. I mean, and then if you rent it out, you put it on Airbnb after your taxes, etc., with reasonable occupancy numbers, you can end up with like a net rental yield of about 5%, which is decent, not extraordinary. You can do better in the US in a lot of places, especially in multifamily housing. But there you've got a place earning you 5%. It was really cheap, and there's a superb lifestyle element to it. And the dollar is really strong right now. So you can do things like this, where it's investing, but there's a certain element of pleasure as well and diversification that comes with it. And then thirdly, and this one's quite interesting. In some countries, if you invest in real estate, the government will give you residency,
Ah,
right? So, for example, in Panama, we help a lot of Canadians and North Americans and Europeans move to Panama. All you need to do is deposit $200,000 in a term deposit in a bank there for 3 years, or invest $200,000 in real estate for 3 years. You can sell after 3 years, and then you'll be granted residency that turns into a permanent residency with minimal time on the ground. You just need to essentially set foot there in Panama once every 2 years for 24 hours to keep your residency active. So just
wow.
by virtue of transferring 200K from your own from a term deposit you have in the US to a term deposit in Panama at a similar rate, or buying real estate, you have a plan B for yourself and your whole family. And all you need to do then is just to go to Panama on vacation every 2 years. It's a short flight away. It's easy to get to, and you have a plan B. So it's quite interesting. And quite a few countries in the world have these residency benefits when you buy real estate. Some of them want it to be active residency, where they say we'll grant you residency, but you need to actually spend a few months every year to be able to renew easily. Other countries, it's purely passive residency. So that's one. And then if you want to take it a step further, We've helped quite a few North Americans with this one as well. That's for the, I don't want to say crazies, but I'll say the crazies. You can get Turkish citizenship by investing $400,000 in any real estate in Turkey. So you can go to Istanbul, the like one of the world's great commercial capitals between East and West, a city of 15 million people, massive business hub. It is Istanbul Airport is one of the biggest airports in the world. It is the most connected airport in the world, even more so than Dubai or Atlanta. And you can buy apartments there, not that expensive in the center. You're looking at like 150 to $200 a square foot in the center, and you just buy
Wow.
a few apartments, $400,000 on the open market. So you're not relegated to specific developments. Just you buy like a Turk. You can rent them out. You'll be making post-tax roughly 4 to 5% net yield, and then you can sell after 3 years. And you still
Nice.
keep the citizenship and you'll be granted citizenship. So citizenship is actually getting the passport. So then you have a Turkish passport for you, your spouse, and all your underage children. And when your children grow up and they have kids, even if the kids are not born in Turkey, as long as they go register them at the consulate or at the embassy, the kids will be Turkish as well. So just by shifting 400K of assets to Turkey for a few years and getting paid for it, right? You are making a decision that will give an extra citizenship, an extra passport, a certain access to the Muslim world for generations to come, for your
Wow.
descendants. So that's pretty cool. Egypt has the same thing, but it's a much weaker passport. But there it's $300,000 in real estate, and you have to keep the real estate for 5 years. Turkey generally is more interesting, but Egypt is viable too. So there's so many opportunities. So international real estate can take a lot of different dimensions.
Wow. Well, I had some questions about having a second residency, which I will get to hopefully, but I want to go back more towards the actual properties. And when you are buying properties in certain areas, what is your intended exit strategy when you're looking for things?
It really depends. So the way
Okay.
I operate is I have a map of the world in my mind that's just active with a whole bunch of moving parts. That's my, I don't know if I'm autistic, that's my thing. And I'll see interesting developments in a country. I'll do a bit of research, etc., and I'll think, okay, cool. Like I think I should go spend time there. This happened in a few years ago with Uzbekistan in Central Asia,
Wow.
where I they had had communism during the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union broke up, but the local communist dictator just essentially stayed in power. And then he died in 2016 or 2017. A new guy came over and then he started implementing reforms and completely opening up the economy. And as this was happening, I was like, wow, so Central Asia's most populous country is just opening up, like is rolling out the red carpet to foreign investors. I should go check it out. So I flew there thinking I would want to buy core real estate in the center, in the capital city in Tashkent. And it was a little because there's no information online on these things, right? Even in I speak Russian, even in Russian, there's barely any information. So I get there, and it turns out that the legality around owning real estate at that point was a little gray. And then I had a look at, I found out by talking to people that there's a local stock market. I was like, there's this local stock market in Uzbekistan. And it's like nowhere. You can't buy it using Interactive Brokers or your Schwab account, or it's not even on the Bloomberg terminal. I mean, that's how obscure it was back then. And so I went to the stock exchange and then I was, how do I buy stocks? And they told me go speak to this broker. So I went into some random office, spoke to a broker, and then I started having a look at these stocks. So very liquid. Taking a $10,000 position might take a few days, right? Um, but some of these companies had double digit dividend yields, zero debt on their balance sheets, and we're growing at 20, 30, 40% a year.
Sheesh.
So I went to Uzbekistan wanting to buy real estate. I left with a brokerage account. But I think the point is I figure out how to, I see a market that's interesting, then I go there, and then I ask myself, how do I play it? Right? So I'm not actively telling myself I want to flip properties all over the world. I have a bit of everything. I do stocks. Occasionally flip properties. I have some more longer term ones. Sometimes I do development. It really depends.
Okay, so I was going through your YouTube channel, which is fabulous, by the way. Just the locations where you film, I'm like, oh, so beautiful. So, one, you were with your realtor in, I think it was Playa del Carmen.
Yeah.
That's it. Okay. And you bought I think it was a 5 unit, and then you're looking to possibly expand, etc. To me, it looked like you were, and I didn't get through the entire video, but you were going to be furnishing them, what you were doing to renovate them. You were buying it 50-50 with your realtor. And to me, it looked like it was going to be a short-term rental. And then there was another one in somewhere in Italy, I think. Gorgeous waterfront property with a balcony. And to me, I would short-term rent that completely. So I was assuming a lot of times you were using these as rentals or for local people to rent, etc. So that's where that question came from. How important is it to have boots on the ground before making a real estate investment in a foreign country?
Look, generally speaking, it's important,
Okay.
right? Just don't buy some apartment remotely in Mexico.
I
It
want to
just
buy a castle on the Rhine in Germany. That's a very far-fetched secret fantasy of mine from my trip to Germany when I was a junior in high school. I'm like, I want to buy one of those castles. So anyway, I digress. That's
you want
me.
cheap castles, go to Italy or France.
Okay.
France has a lot of cheap castles.
Oh, gosh. It's
Yeah.
like fairy tales to me.
Terrible investment. Terrible investment, but beautiful. For some reason, they're cheap.
Okay.
The maintenance is just too high, and property taxes are a killer. But yes. So look, don't just buy some random property remotely online unless you know the area, right? And unless you know that there's a certain amount of risk. Have I bought things remotely? Absolutely. I do it often. When there's a market I find interesting, typically I'll leave power of attorney with with a local lawyer
Okay.
so that when an opportunity arises, I can just pull the trigger quick, remotely, boom, get the deal done. But for someone's first international real estate transaction, absolutely spend time there, meet the people, do your due diligence, meet the lawyers in person for sure. You have to be reasonable.
Okay. Thank you for that. So, are there any underrated markets right now that you think offer great investment potential?
Yeah, I mean, okay, cool. So
Let
close
me
to
get my
home,
pen. Go ahead.
yeah. Close to home, Medellin in Colombia is doing well. The yields are good, the rental yields. I have a penthouse there. I'm making 9 to 10% net per year.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's a nice property. So I'm not like slumlording it. It's a penthouse, jacuzzi, the whole deal, cool neighborhood. So Medellin is doing well. A lot of investors, tourism is really booming. So that's one. If your risk appetite is a little higher, you're a bit more adventurous. I recently bought a few apartments in Kenya, in the capital
Wow.
city in Nairobi. Uh, Very affordable. I bought off plan from a Chinese developer. When I bought, there was a bit of litigation going on, which made it even cheaper. Now the litigation is gone, so it's been de-risked. They're raising their prices by 10%, but it's still really affordable. You're looking at roughly $120 per square foot for a new tower in Nairobi's best neighborhood,
Wow.
like best neighborhood in a building with indoor heated swimming pool, gym, the whole deal for, yeah, $120 a square foot. So it's hard to go wrong with that. And the capital city of Nairobi is expected to almost double in population by 2050. So it's
Wow.
Africa. The demographics are really strong. So that's also quite interesting. And I'm expecting before tax net rental yields of 7 to 8% once it's done in 2.5 years. And then there's a payment plan also over 2.5 years. So that's quite interesting.
I love how you price it by price per square foot. So that I love that. Just it makes it so much easier just to really get a price on the amount of things here. So, and forgive me for this, and how rude of me, but you said it's close to home. So where is home for you right now? Because I've looked on your website at the map of all the places you've lived. How many countries have you lived in?
Uh, like 12 or 13.
Okay, so where are you
But
living now?
lived. I'm a bit all over right now. When I meant close to home, I meant for you.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. But where are you
For
now?
home, China. Right now, I'm in Switzerland. I
Oh,
don't live
very
in
nice.
Switzerland. I just happen to be in Switzerland, and then I'm off to Montenegro tomorrow. Beautiful little
That
country in the Balkans.
that was the episode I watched. It was Montenegro because I was like,
A
I don't
lot
know
of
where that
Americans
is.
are moving to Montenegro. We're helping a lot of
Gorgeous.
Americans move. Yeah, beautiful little country, and very easy to move to. Because typically, as an American, moving to Europe is not easy. You need a golden visa, etc. It can get quite expensive. But Montenegro will grant you residency if you buy any property or if you just create a company and employ yourself. Total cost is about like 3K a year if you do that. So
Wow.
for 3K a year, you can be living on the Mediterranean in Europe in a gorgeous little country where there's skiing and there's beaches, everything. So a lot of Americans are choosing Montenegro as a destination because of how easy it is to move to.
And a little shout out for something that I went, oh my goodness, I would have never thought about that. But a lot of people who live in areas, say California, who have a lot of mountains and live on sides of things, you were saying you had a gorgeous view from this one condo that you were looking at, and you said, oh, that could be a possible construction site down there. What are they going to build there? What about across the street, which is right where your view was of the water? You are already thinking ahead as an investor of what can they build there? Can they build something up that's going to block my view? So shout out to you for that, because that is something we don't think about. I just was like money shot when you're there, but you're thinking ahead to if that money shot is being taken away. So shout out to you. I want to get into
I'll cut you right here because in a lot of
yes.
emerging markets, zoning is not it's not like in the US. You can't
Okay.
just assume that the zoning is similar. And then there's a lot of corruption as well. So even if there are zoning regulations, etc., I mean, if a developer is going to be building a 20-story high building, right, with 150 units, that can be a big bribe to get that permit. So
Wow.
you got to be careful. You got to be very mindful that you can't trust zoning regulations entirely in these markets.
Interesting.
They can be because the regulators are corrupt, or they can just legally change them again through incentives and lobbying. So
That is crazy. So, going back to citizenship and residency, I just have one more question on this because you mentioned quite a bit in the beginning there. But what are the biggest misconceptions about people obtaining residency or citizenship in another country?
yeah, good question. So the first one is obtaining a residency or citizenship in another country is completely legal. As an American or as a Canadian, you're allowed to accumulate multiple citizenships. It doesn't mean that if you become Turkish, you have to renounce US. Like, not at all. Like, you can be both Turkish and American, not a problem. And residencies also, you can stack residencies. You can have as many as you want. And having a residency in a country does not necessarily mean that you become a tax resident, right? Sometimes it does. Rarely, a few countries, but in the vast majority of cases, it doesn't make you a tax resident. So there's very little downside to accumulating residencies and citizenships. All it does is increase your flexibility in life. Plan B, And then, as I said, it's a generational play as well for your kids, grandchildren, and the future generations that are not born yet, especially when it comes to citizenship. I mean, my daughter is born with four citizenships. She'll she'll have a lot of options in life. She will be able to live, work, or be a politician in a lot of different countries. So that's a huge advantage.
Huge. And I'm personally allergic to children, so I will not be passing that on because I was a middle school teacher. So I developed that allergy, but great for families out there and passing that on to the future. So thank you for that. Little on the personal side here. So you travel constantly. I love the map that you have on your website, places I've visited, places I've lived, and you're researching opportunities firsthand. What's a country that surprised you the most, either positively or negatively?
Positively, a country that very few people ever go to as tourists, but that is absolutely wonderful and completely unique, both from a fauna and flora point of view,
Ooh.
is Madagascar. And I'm not talking of the cartoon, just throw that away. Just Madagascar. Like Madagascar is just sublime. It's a little tough if you don't speak French, which is why a lot of Anglophone people don't quite go there, but it is very, very rewarding. Like you will have a unique experience, and it's not like saying, "Oh, I've been to Thailand and blah blah," like the usual stuff. No one ever goes to Madagascar. It's there, it's huge, it's beautiful. No one ever goes there, and it's absolutely worth it going there. So I'd say Madagascar.
Thank you. And what about negatively?
Negatively, one that oof, okay. One that I find a little disappointing is but that a lot of people seem to be pumping online is Uruguay,
Okay.
which is it makes sense on paper. It's Latin America, but it's very first world. The infrastructure good, banking is good, the taxes are low, it's pretty safe, but it is so boring that it destroys your soul. I just spent 5 days there with my family. Man, we just couldn't wait to leave. We just could not wait. Though we didn't even have enough time to get bored at that point. It was just 5 days, but we could just sense that we were going to reach a point where it would just impact us emotionally. We had to go. It,
I
it
don't mean
could
to
not.
laugh, but
Yeah, like no, Uruguay, no.
it's no Madagascar. So, all right. Another personal question here. So, what is one investment mistake that you've made that taught you a valuable lesson?
That's a good one. Yeah. So I think a good example is I got the macro right and I invested in Ivory Coast in West Africa not long after the Civil War was finished. And that was when I was still working full time. So I just took 2 weeks off to go, but it just wasn't enough. I should have done more market research. And I got involved in a development that was just a bit too far from the center of the capital city, and prices have just boomed since then, but not my property, which is very frustrating.
Wow.
So, when a market is about to go on a bull market, don't try to be smart and go for the third tier, second tier area. Just buy prime. Simple. Right.
Simple.
You go into second tier, third tier once the bull market is underway and these assets haven't really risen yet, and you can sense that they will. But here, I just went way out there. I bought some third tier assets when I could have bought some first tier assets, and I don't know why. I was still pretty young. I didn't have enough time to analyze, and you know, I made that mistake. So now I'm very cognizant of it, right? So Argentina right now is the bull market has started. It's clear. Um, You can still buy prime pretty affordable, but second tier hasn't budged at all, but it will. So right now, I'm going back to Argentina next week, after Montenegro tomorrow. Next week, I'm flying to Argentina, and I'll be looking at second tier, but not too far second tier, but like close second tier.
And lesson learned on that one. Thank you for sharing that. So I want to go a little bit into something I know nothing about, and offshore banking. So offshore banking, often it gets a bad rap, but you see it as an essential strategy. So why should investors consider opening offshore bank accounts?
Look, it's just a matter of diversification. And
Okay.
I would say, don't ask me, ask the Canadian truckers.
The
They'll tell
Canadian
you why you need it.
truckers?
Yeah, because when they were protesting Trudeau, they had their accounts frozen. You'd like single mom
Oh,
donated $10 to the truckers, and they'd get their accounts frozen. So just ask these people, would they have liked to have access to an offshore bank account at that point in time? Yes. So you need it for diversification. If you don't agree with your government or believe that you won't agree with the next government, and if you think that governments will become increasingly tyrannical on whatever side of the aisle you sit, probably makes sense to have a little bit of money tucked away. And then also in case of not legal advice, but in case of court cases and this and that, it's harder. Like the government can't just take money from your account in another jurisdiction. They can try to force you to make you bring the money back, but they can't just like automatically take. So there's a lot of reasons.
wow. Thank you for sharing that because, like I said, I know nothing about it. So I'm going to have to start investigating. So, very generalized question here, but what are you currently most excited about in the world of international investing?
Volatility.
Okay. What specifically?
We have, I mean, we're living through some pretty intense times right now. And I mean, if we're going to be seeing as much craziness and volatility in the next 5 years as we've witnessed in the past 5 years, things are going to be pretty wild. So I'm personally embracing it through diversification by not being all in anything. I think it would be very dangerous to be all in anything right now at this point in time, whether it be one country or one asset class, because we don't know what's going to happen at all. So I'm just embracing volatility through making sure that I stay diversified and that I can sleep well at night.
Okay. So, before we go to the second part of the podcast here, where can people follow you? I know the answer to this, but I want you to say it. Where can people follow you and stay updated on your latest adventures?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So the best way to sign up to my free newsletter on thewanderingInvestor.com, and you'll actually get a free ebook, 12 Mistakes to Avoid Making When Investing in International Real Estate.
Nice.
And yeah, so it wasn't just one mistake, it was 12 mistakes. I've learned the hard way. And then you'll get updates as I travel around the world in search of real estate and residency and citizenship opportunities. And then I'm on YouTube, X, Telegram, and Instagram as well.
And the YouTube channel is great. Whoever your videographer is does a really great job as well because like Montenegro, I was like, that place is gorgeous. Where is that? I'm a nerd. Where you geek out over maps and things like that you study. My husband does that too, by the way. I don't know anything about where anything is. This is so silly, but I have a treadmill and it has a 22-inch screen on it. And I travel to different places and we hike through, like right now I'm in the Scotland Highlands. And so I'm hiking through there, but I had to buy a world map because I'm like, where's Easter Island? Where's all this stuff? So I literally have a map on the wall right next to my treadmill so I can figure out where the hell I am. So, but your YouTube channel, just to go back to that, was fantastic. I could spend hours on it. So I had to quickly try to get through different ones, but very great job. And you heard me give a badassery bestowment at the beginning, which is just a little nugget, a piece of advice. Do you have a badassery bestowment that you'd like to share with the audience?
Don't rush into anything. Take your time. We're going to be living through times that are designed to make you emotional and make emotional decisions. Don't fall for it. It's a trap. Take your time, one step at a time.
Very well said. Thank you for that. All right. The second part of the podcast here is what makes Ladislas Maurice. I had to play that song for you. It was a Space Cowboy. I started that the last time. You're like, what is she talking about? She's nuts. Anyway, the second part of the podcast is what makes you a badass. And I use the acronym BADASS. And the first letter is B for book. What's a book that's made a huge difference in your life?
The Gulag Archipelago by Solzhenitsyn.
The what?
Solzhenitsyn was a Russian philosopher that got persecuted by the Bolsheviks and sent to the Gulag for, I don't know, 10, 15 years or so.
Wow.
Beautiful book. It's a classic of Russian literature. I highly encourage it, especially in times where presidents, on whichever side, again, seem to be increasingly tyrannical. So, yeah, good book.
Whew. And we're not getting political, but yes, understood what you just said. All right. The first A in badass is for advice. You've given us great advice, but what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
So the best piece of advice that I've received and that I really follow is don't be a cheap ass when it comes to hiring lawyers, especially when you venture overseas, right? It's a new environment. It's a legal environment. There's so many things that you don't know that you don't know. So you can't just go around assuming that things are like back home. So don't try to get the cheaper lawyer. Just get a good, reputable lawyer and explain to him that, like, right now
Or her,
or her, actually her. Right now I have a lawyer in Cambodia. I'm buying land in Cambodia in Southeast Asia. And my lawyer, I was on a call with her yesterday and I told her, listen, Fari, I need hand holding. Like, I don't know the process here in Cambodia. Don't assume that I understand anything. Explain things to me like I'm a child. Right? And then I have a lot of questions and then blah, blah. And then things are fine. And then transactions go well and I'm safe. But yeah, always get a good lawyer.
Great advice. And how would you even know where to start looking for a good lawyer that understands real estate investing?
Good question. So in this particular case, I asked the trustees of the trust company that I'm using to buy the land. I talked with her. She had lived overseas, etc., in France. So we connected. So I was comfortable. In many cases, you can just go to the website of the U.S. Embassy, and they have a list of recommended lawyers, law firms, attorneys, etc. So those are usually, I mean, they've gone through some element of due diligence. So if they're recommended by the U.S. Embassy, the last thing they want to do is to screw around with U.S. citizens, because I mean it's a good source of business for them. So that's
great advice. All right, the D in badass is for drive. What drives you to be successful?
Freedom.
I love it. Able to take a trip with your parents and spend months and never even make it to Dubai. Have you been to Dubai, by the way?
Yeah.
So the freedom, and what does that freedom give you?
That's a good question. What does freedom give? Peace of mind.
Nice. Very good. All right. The second A in badass is for aspiration. I'm a big goal setter. So what is a goal you are currently working on?
Growing my family.
Really? How many kids do you have? You have one daughter, I know of.
2 on the way. So my aspiration is more reproduction.
And more time spending reproducing. Very good. I love it. All right. The first S in badass is for systems. What systems do you have in place to help you achieve success?
I'm actually pretty disorganized.
Do you have people around you that like help keep you organized?
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
I deal with emerging markets, so you can't really be systematic in these countries. Everything's always a bit chaotic. Um, so, I mean, everything runs out of WhatsApp.
All right. Well, that works. All right. To wrap this up, and this has been such a great conversation, the final S in badass is for success. What does success mean to you?
It's going to be a combination of the other two, a mixture of freedom and successful reproduction.
Very nice. Well, Ladislas, this has been fabulous, and I appreciate you so much. I am just my takeaways from this. I'm going to start looking into investing in an offshore account. And any suggestion on where I should go first?
Their options are a bit limited for US people and because of FATCA regulations. By the way, if you're American and you have an account overseas, you have to declare it every year to the IRS. It's called an FBAR. So just be compliant. There are options for Americans in Panama, in Mauritius, and a few jurisdictions. But generally speaking, it's a bit harder for Americans. For Canadians, it's easier. We help Americans open accounts in Mauritius, for example.
Very good. And I am no longer going to go after that castle on the Rhine. I need to start looking in France, or you said Spain.
France or Italy.
Italy. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. All right. I'm putting it on my list. And I need to travel to Madagascar. So Ladislas, from someone who
get a
said
Turkish passport.
And get a Turkish passport. Exactly. So quick funny story on Turkey. We had an international food thing when I was in elementary school, and I had to wear a banner that said Turkey. And in the US, being a turkey is not so cool. So my parents held on to that banner and used to use it for gags and stuff. Oh, you got to put on the turkey banner. Anyway, so this has been fabulous. I thank you so very much for being here today. Thank you, Ladislas.
All right. Thank you, Jen.
Absolutely. And that is all. Thank you for listening. We'll catch you on the next episode. Now, go out there and share your badassery. And don't forget, make it a great day. Take care. Bye-bye. Whoop, whoop.
Thank you for listening to RAIN, the Real Estate Investor Growth Network. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. If you need more badassery, you can follow Jen Josey by visiting therealjenjosey.com or become a member of RAIN by registering on rainmastermind.com.